A snowstorm locks the city, a fight explodes, and a terrified waitress is pulled into a penthouse, and a reckless kiss that changes everything. Weeks later, 2 pink lines. He claims her with a ring, not flowers, for protection. But a red dot slides across the kitchen glass. A sniper fires. Suddenly, rumors hit. Fake lab results say the baby isn't his. Debt sharks crawl out of her past. And inside his mansion, someone he trusts is feeding the enemy. She wants out. He says, "Over my dead body." Cameras go live. Secrets spill. The only way to survive is to turn the trap back on the men who set it. If love is the only safe place in a war like this, who will she be when the shooting stops, and what will he destroy to keep the mother of his child? The crystal chandeliers flickered as the first notes of chaos struck the ballroom. Arden's hands trembled slightly as she wiped down the polished bar top, her borrowed uniform collar too tight against her throat. The violinist's bow stuttered mid-note, and she felt it, that electric charge in the air before a storm breaks. Glass exploded near her head. Strong hands yanked her down as a bottle shattered where she'd been standing. The sharp scent of spilled whiskey mixed with something metallic. Blood, maybe? Her heart hammered against her ribs. "Stay down!" The command came low and steady, a voice used to being obeyed. Calder Viscari's broad shoulders formed a shield above her, his expensive tuxedo jacket brushing her cheek. She could feel the coiled tension in his frame, ready to move. More glass broke. Someone screamed. The music died completely. "Sir, we need to clear the floor," a man's voice cut through the growing chaos. "They brought more than we expected." "Take her through the service exit," Calder ordered, helping Arden to her feet. His hand spanned her lower back, guiding her firmly toward a hidden door. "Marcus, lock down the level. No one leaves until we sort this." The service corridor was narrow and stark after the ballroom's opulence. Their footsteps echoed on concrete as Calder led her to a private elevator. Her borrowed heels clicked unsteadily. "I should go," Arden said, pressing herself against the elevator's mirrored wall. "Really, I can catch a cab." "The streets aren't safe tonight." Calder's reflection watched her in the mirror, his dark eyes intent. "And the storms made them worse. You're staying here." The elevator climbed silently. Arden's pulse refused to slow. She could smell his cologne, something expensive and subtle that made her want to lean closer. "Mr. Viscari." "Calder," he corrected softly. "Just Calder tonight." The penthouse doors opened onto sprawling luxury. Floor-to-ceiling windows, showcasing the swirling snow, a fireplace casting golden light across leather and marble. Arden hugged her arms around herself, suddenly aware of her borrowed uniform and messy bun. "Drink?" Calder was already at a crystal decanter, pouring amber liquid into heavy glasses. The firelight caught on his signet ring as he handed her one. "I'm still technically on shift," she tried to joke, but accepted the scotch. The first sip burned beautifully. "I think we can call it a night." His smile was slight but genuine. He shrugged off his jacket, the movement drawing her eye to broad shoulders under fine white cotton. "Let me see your wrist." She hadn't even noticed the small cut from the flying glass. His fingers were surprisingly gentle as he examined it, turning her hand in the warm light. "It's nothing," she said, but didn't pull away. "Still needs cleaning." He disappeared into another room, returning with a first aid kit that seemed excessive for a scratch. But his touch remained careful as he dabbed antiseptic on the cut, his head bent close enough that she could see the faint silver at his temples. Outside, the storm intensified. Snow erased the city below, muffling even the persistent sirens. The penthouse felt like a bubble suspended above reality, all gold light and whispered conversation and the crackle of burning logs. "You're shivering." Calder draped a cashmere throw around her shoulders before she could protest. His hands lingered, warming her through the soft fabric. "Just adrenaline," Arden admitted. She sank onto the leather couch, tucking her feet under her. The scotch had left a pleasant warmth in her chest. Or maybe that was the way Calder watched her, like she was a puzzle he wanted to solve. He sat beside her, close enough that she could feel his heat. "Tell me your name, your real one." "Arden." She studied the play of firelight in her glass. "Just Arden tonight." Hours slipped by like snow falling past the windows. They talked about nothing important, favorite books, worst jobs, childhood pets. He listened like every word mattered, asking questions that made her laugh despite herself. When she shivered again, he built up the fire, movements efficient and practiced. The scotch was long gone, but Arden felt drunk on the unreality of it all. on his small smiles and careful touches. On the way he'd positioned himself between her and every door without seeming to think about it. She didn't mean to drift off, but the couch was soft and the fire was warm and Calder's shoulder was right there. He shifted slightly to accommodate her weight, one hand coming up to smooth her hair. Through half-closed eyes, she watched snowflakes dance beyond the windows. Sirens wailed faintly, reminding her of the world below. But here, in this golden bubble of firelight and cashmere and Calder's steady presence, even chaos felt distant. His fingers continued their gentle pattern through her hair. She should move, should maintain some professional distance, should remember exactly who he was and what he did beyond these walls. Instead, she let herself sink deeper into the moment, into the impossible peace of being held by someone who dealt in violence, but touched her like she might break. Tomorrow would come, soon enough, with its questions and consequences. For now, there was just the snow and the fire and Calder's heartbeat under her cheek, strong and sure as a promise neither of them had made. The first hints of dawn filtered through the penthouse windows, painting the snow-covered city in shades of pearl. Arden blinked awake, disoriented by unfamiliar luxury. A cashmere blanket draped over her shoulders, and the lingering scent of expensive cologne clung to her borrowed uniform. Calder's low voice drifted from the balcony, where he stood in shirt sleeves despite the cold, phone pressed to his ear. "I want the security footage from every angle. Yes, including the service corridors." A pause. "Handle the cleanup. I'll deal with Marchetti myself." Arden eased off the leather couch, gathering her hair into a fresh bun. Her shoes sat neatly by the fireplace, where he must have placed them. On silent feet, she slipped them on, smoothing wrinkles from her skirt. A staff keycard lay on the marble counter beside a crystal tumbler. She hesitated, then grabbed a notepad from beside the house phone, scrawling a quick note. "I'll return the card to HR. Thank you for the shelter from the storm." No signature needed. The service elevator hummed quietly, carrying her down through the sleeping hotel. Emergency warnings still scrolled across her phone. Dangerous road conditions, canceled flights, closed schools. She pulled her thin jacket closer and stepped into the bitter morning. Days blurred together after that. Morning bus rides to double shifts at the diner and temp office. Her phone chirped with a voicemail from the hotel staffing agency, but she let it go to message. Life settled back into its familiar rhythm of work and sleep and more work. Until the first morning, she had to sprint to the bathroom, barely making it before her stomach rebelled. She blamed bad takeout, then a stomach bug. But when her period didn't come, she bought a test at the corner drugstore. The first faint line appeared while she sat on her bathroom floor, counting seconds. 2 days later, a second test showed darker lines that couldn't be ignored. Her hands shook as she set it beside the first one on her chipped bathroom counter. 3 weeks after that snowy night, Arden sat in a free clinic waiting room, giving them the name Sarah Miller. The nurse practitioner was kind, walking her through options while Arden stared at the definitive, positive result. "Do you want to discuss termination resources?" the nurse asked gently. Arden touched her still flat stomach. No. The certainty in her voice surprised her. "I'm keeping it." She scheduled a follow-up appointment for the following week, tucking the card into her wallet beside her real ID. Outside, she leaned against the brick wall, letting reality settle over her. A baby. His baby. That evening found her in her basement studio, methodically filling boxes with the few possessions worth keeping. Old textbooks, secondhand clothes, the quilt her grandmother made. The space looked even smaller with cardboard stacked against the walls. She'd already given notice at both jobs, planning to catch a bus west after one final hotel paycheck. Her laptop glowed in the growing darkness as she typed, "How to co-parent with a dangerous man." Articles about custody agreements and safety plans filled the screen. Arden stared at them, imagining trying to negotiate schedules with a man who controlled half the city's underground, who could make people disappear with a phone call. "This is insane," she muttered, closing the tab. None of that mattered. She'd be gone before he ever knew, raising this child far from his world of violence and power plays. The last box took forever to tape shut, her hands clumsy with exhaustion. A small duffel bag waited by the door, holding essentials for the first few days of her new life. Her phone alarm was set for 7 a.m. Enough time to stop by HR, drop off the keycard, and catch the morning bus. Arden sat cross-legged on her stripped mattress, rehearsing tomorrow's speech. "I appreciate the opportunity, but I've accepted a position out of state. Yes, effective immediately. No, I can't stay longer. Family emergency." The lies felt clunky on her tongue. She tried again. Personal circumstances require me to leave. I apologize for the short notice. Better. Professional. Forgettable. She touched her stomach again, the gesture already becoming habit. We'll be okay, she whispered to the tiny life inside her. We'll find somewhere safe, somewhere quiet. Just us. The basement's small window showed only a slice of night sky, but she could imagine the hotel towers rising above the city. Somewhere up there, Calder was probably in his penthouse, handling business, unaware his world was about to shift. Not that he'd notice one missing waitress. Men like him didn't waste time on temporary staff who passed through their orbit. That night had been a storm-induced anomaly. Two strangers finding brief shelter together. Arden checked her bus ticket one last time. A 7-hour ride to a city she'd picked mainly because it was far enough away. She'd find work there, maybe take some community college classes, build a normal life for her child, free from the shadows that haunted the city. The speech still needed work. She cleared her throat, trying again. I'm submitting my immediate resignation. Here's the borrowed keycard. No, I don't need my last check mailed. Yes, I'm sure about this decision. Tomorrow, she'd say the words for real. Walk away from this basement, this city, that night. But for now, she curled up on her mattress, one hand resting protective over her stomach, and listened to the familiar sounds of the city that would soon be just another memory. Arden's hands trembled as she pushed through the hotel's revolving door at precisely 8:30 a.m. The marble lobby stretched before her, impossibly vast and silent. No chattering guests, no rolling luggage, just the click of her sensible flats against the polished floor. Something was wrong. The usual morning bustle had been replaced by a watchful stillness that made her skin prickle. Behind the front desk, the concierge's eyes tracked her movement with too much interest for a casual employee resignation. Her rehearsed speech to HR felt foolish now. The carefully typed resignation letter burned in her bag like evidence of a crime. 3 steps in, and she knew she'd miscalculated. Badly. A door she'd never noticed before whispered open in the wood-paneled wall to her left. Calder Viscari filled the private corridor's entrance, his suit as sharp as a blade and his expression winter-cold. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The weight of his presence pulled her forward until she stood before him, throat dry. Inside. One word. Soft as silk, but lined with steel. Her feet moved before her brain could object. The corridor door sealed them into a space that felt airless despite its height. Light panels cast everything in stark relief, including the manila folder in his hands. You used the name Sarah Collins at the Riverside Clinic. He didn't phrase it as a question. Our security flags aliases at partner clinics. It's a protection measure against exploitation cases. The floor seemed to tilt beneath her. Of course he would have systems in place. Of course he would know. The follow-up appointment is scheduled for next Tuesday at 2 p.m. He leafed through papers she couldn't see clearly. You'll need to cancel that. My private physician has already been briefed. I don't need, she started. You do. His voice remained level, but his eyes held something darker. There are dangers you haven't considered. Accidents happen to unprotected women carrying a Dawn's child. Car failures, home invasions, gas leaks. Each possibility landed like a blow. He wasn't threatening her. The threat lay in what he couldn't control, in the rivals who would see her as leverage. You can't run forever. He stepped closer, not touching, but close enough that she could smell his cologne. Not from this, not from me. Her back pressed against the wall. What do you want? To keep you safe. He opened the folder again. We announce our engagement today. My legal team has prepared the necessary documents. You'll have full protection, a security detail, and a driver waiting downstairs. The word engagement crackled between them like static electricity. No, she forced steel into her voice. I won't be a prisoner. Name your terms. The offer caught her off guard. She'd expected orders, not negotiations. My name stays private, she said. No press releases, no social media announcements. He nodded once. Done. I make my own medical decisions. Within reason, yes. And I keep working. This was non-negotiable. Remotely until I decide otherwise. His mouth curved slightly. Your resignation letter is unnecessary. I've already arranged a transfer to our digital marketing team. Full benefits, flexible hours. Of course he had. He'd probably known her every move before she'd made it. The folder appeared again, open to a contract that would reshape her entire existence. Do we have an agreement? Her hand shook as she took the offered pen. The signature she placed below his was steady anyway. "The driver will take you home to pack what you need." He checked his watch. "I'll expect you back by 4. It wasn't a request. Nothing with him ever would be. Hours blurred past in a haze of cardboard boxes and hastily folded clothes. Her landlord accepted the lease termination without question, probably because Calder's people had already handled it. The few items she truly cared about fit into one duffel bag, which now sat at her feet in the private elevator to his penthouse. Her signed resignation form was still in her bag, useless now. The doors began to slide shut on the lobby below, on the life she'd tried to protect, on every careful plan she'd made. The numbers climbed. 15, 16, 17. Each floor carried her further from the world she knew. She clutched the strap of her duffel tighter, watching the digital display tick upward with mechanical precision. 28, 29, 30. The elevator hummed around her, a cocoon of polished steel and soft lighting. Her reflection in the mirrored walls showed a woman she barely recognized, pale but composed, wearing yesterday's clothes but carrying herself like someone who had just negotiated with the dawn and survived. The signed contract in her bag felt like a lifeline and a chain all at once. Protection and constraint, safety and surrender. The doors continued their inexorable closure on her old life, inch by silent inch. The penthouse stretched across the entire top floor, a fortress of glass and steel, softened by designer furniture and indirect lighting. Ms. Chen, the household manager, led Arden through each room with quiet efficiency, her heels clicking against marble floors. "The kitchen is fully stocked," she explained, gesturing to gleaming appliances. "Chef Marcus prepares meals during the week, but you're welcome to cook any time." Arden nodded, trying to absorb the details of her new cage, no matter how luxurious. The living area flowed into a formal dining room, then a study lined with dark wood shelving. A hallway led to several closed doors, guest rooms, she assumed, and ended at the master suite. "Your things will be moved to the main bedroom," Ms. Chen said. "The closet has been prepared." 2 women in tailored suits appeared from opposite ends of the hallway. Maria and Sarah, the security detail. They wore identical earpieces and carried themselves with the same contained alertness she'd noticed in all of Calder's people. "One of us will always be on duty," Maria explained, handing Arden a sleek phone. "This has direct access to our team. Single number 24/7 response." The device felt heavy in her palm, a lifeline she hadn't asked for but couldn't refuse. Her old phone lay somewhere in her duffel, probably being swept for tracking devices. As twilight painted the city in shades of violet and gold, Arden stood in the kitchen, watching Ms. Chen arrange a dinner tray of grilled salmon and roasted vegetables. The food smelled wonderful, but her appetite had vanished hours ago. Calder entered silently, his suit jacket gone, shirt sleeves rolled to expose powerful forearms. "You should eat." "I'm not hungry." She turned to face him. "We need to talk about these rules." "They're non-negotiable." He moved to pour himself a scotch, ice clinking against crystal. "The security measures stay in place." "They're chains," she bit out. "Prettier than handcuffs, but still chains." "They keep you alive." His voice remained maddeningly calm. "No unescorted walks, doctor visits with protection, media silence until we control the narrative." "And how long does that last?" She gripped the edge of the sink. "A month? A year? Until the baby—" A pinprick of red light danced across the window behind her. Calder's eyes widened a fraction, the only warning before the glass exploded inward. His body slammed into hers as the suppressed shot cracked through the kitchen. They hit the floor behind the island, his hand cradling the back of her head. Boots thundered above them as his security team deployed to the roof. "Target floor confirmed," a voice crackled through someone's earpiece. 30-second estimated time of arrival." Calder's instructions cut through the chaos like a blade. "Full sweep of adjacent buildings. I want thermal imaging on every rooftop within range. Lock down all elevator access." Glass crunched under tactical boots. The dinner tray lay overturned nearby, salmon and vegetables scattered across imported tile. Arden's heart hammered against her ribs as she processed what had just happened. Someone had tried to kill her, someone who knew exactly where she would be standing. "The delivery," Calder said into his phone, voice deadly quiet. "Every person who touched that order, now." Maria appeared beside them, pressing a Kevlar vest against Arden's chest. "Put this on, slowly." The vest weighed a ton, but Arden's trembling fingers managed the straps. Calder kept one hand on her shoulder while issuing more orders, his body angled between her and the broken window. "Clear," a voice announced over the radio. "Sniper nest abandoned. Recovery team en route." "They timed it," Arden whispered. "They knew when dinner would arrive." Calder's jaw clenched. "Someone talked. We'll find out who." They stayed on the floor under a Kevlar throw while the team secured the perimeter. 9:12 p.m. glowed from the oven display, surreal in its mundane precision. Security agents moved through the penthouse with practiced efficiency, weapons ready, calling out status updates. Arden's racing pulse gradually slowed, but the reality of her situation crystallized with brutal clarity. This wasn't just about her anymore. This wasn't even just about the baby. She was carrying the heir to an empire built on blood and violence, and someone wanted them both dead. The all clear came through the radios. Calder's hand remained steady on her shoulder, his breathing controlled but elevated. She could feel the lethal tension in his body, the carefully leashed violence waiting to be unleashed on whoever had dared target what was his. Glass glittered on the floor like deadly stars, catching the kitchen lights. The salmon lay face down near her feet, a reminder of how quickly normal could shatter. Maria stood guard nearby, her weapon holstered, but her stance ready, while the rest of the team continued their methodical sweep. The rules didn't feel like chains anymore. They felt like the only thing standing between her and a bullet, between her unborn child and those who would use them as leverage against the most dangerous man in the city. Arden pressed a hand to her still flat stomach, protected now by Kevlar and the full might of Calder's organization. The phone with its single emergency number dug into her hip, where she'd tucked it earlier, no longer a symbol of constraint, but a promise of survival. They remained there on the kitchen floor, breathing hard, surrounded by the wreckage of what should have been their first dinner together. The city lights sparkled beyond the broken window, beautiful and treacherous as always, while somewhere in the darkness, someone was already planning their next move. The city glowed like a circuit board through the temporary boards covering the shattered window. Arden perched on the edge of the guest room bed at 11:40 p.m., her borrowed nightgown soft against her skin. The events of the evening played on repeat in her mind. The red dot, the glass, Calder's immediate response. A gentle knock interrupted her thoughts. "Do you need anything?" Calder's voice carried through the door. "Besides space?" She appreciated that he understood her need for distance. "I'm okay, thank you." Morning arrived with new routines and careful choreography. Arden nursed mint tea at the breakfast bar while scheduling her clinic follow-up. 10 o'clock, she announced, watching Calder's reaction. He nodded, phone already in hand. "I've arranged a consult with Dr. Harrison at noon. Private practice, excellent reputation." "My clinic first," she said firmly. "Agreed." His tone stayed neutral, but she caught the slight tension in his jaw. The drive across town felt endless. Their security detail maintained a discreet presence, 2 cars ahead, 2 behind. Inside their vehicle, Calder sat beside her, but didn't crowd, his attention split between his phone and the passing streets. At the clinic, the familiar waiting room offered strange comfort with its dated magazines and faded posters. When they called her name, Calder followed at a respectful distance, positioning himself in the corner of the exam room. The doctor's movements were efficient and gentle as she set up the portable. "Ultrasound." "Early days," she explained, "but we should hear something." The first flutter of sound filled the room. Quick, determined, alive. Tears welled in Arden's eyes before she could stop them. Without a word, Calder reached over and handed her a tissue from the counter. His gaze remained fixed on the grainy screen, watching their child's first appearance in the world. "Strong heartbeat," the doctor confirmed. "Everything looks perfectly on track." Over a late lunch at a private room in one of his restaurants, Calder pulled out his tablet. "The staff was enthusiastic," he said, sliding it across the table. Arden stared at the detailed nursery blueprint, complete with security specs and a meditation corner. "This is ridiculous," she scoffed, but her finger traced the eastern wall. "Though if you're going to have a chair, it should go here, for the morning light." His lips quirked slightly as he made the note. The penthouse felt different when they returned. The kitchen window had been replaced, all evidence of violence erased. Not a shard of glass remained, not a scratch marked the counter. The pristine restoration felt worse somehow, like they were pretending nothing had happened. Arden stood in the spotless kitchen, arms wrapped around herself. The setting sun painted the new window in shades of amber and gold. "I can sleep on the couch," Calder offered quietly. "Or station myself outside your door." She shook her head. "I'll be fine." Then, after a pause, Maybe leave the door cracked? Of course. Hours later, at 1 a.m., Arden lay awake in the dark guest room. Her phone cast a soft glow as she scrolled through pregnancy websites. "Your baby is the size of a poppy seed," one declared cheerfully, as if that tiny life hadn't already upended everything. Through the cracked door, she heard Calder's voice in the hallway, low and controlled. "Make sure the Costelli connection looks organic," he murmured into what she knew was a secure line. "We need the smear to stick." She closed the pregnancy app and stared at the ceiling, listening to the quiet menace in his tone. The father of her child was plotting someone's destruction with the same careful attention he'd shown while watching their baby's heartbeat this morning. The day's events swirled in her mind. The gentle doctor, the thoughtful blueprints, the tissue offered without comment. Then the erased violence, the security details, the midnight plotting. How could someone be both? How could she trust either version? Her hand drifted to her stomach, still flat, still secret to the world. Outside her door, Calder continued his quiet conversation about ruining lives, while inside her, a poppy seed-sized future grew stronger by the hour. She opened another browser tab, searching for symptoms to expect in the coming weeks. Morning sickness, fatigue, food aversions. Normal things, manageable things. Things that had nothing to do with snipers or security protocols or rivals being systematically destroyed. The websites suggested keeping crackers by the bed, staying hydrated, getting plenty of rest. They didn't mention what to do when your child's father orchestrated vengeance between prenatal appointments. They didn't explain how to balance gratitude for protection with fear of the protector. Calder's voice faded as he moved down the hallway, but the weight of his words remained. Make it look organic. Make the smear stick. The clinical precision in his tone matched how he'd discussed security upgrades, nursery plans, doctor appointments. Arden switched back to the pregnancy app, seeking comfort in its simple weekly updates and cheerful milestones. She read about cellular division and early development, about how her body was already changing to create a safe space for new life. The science of it felt clean, uncomplicated. Through the crack in the door, soft light spilled from the hallway. The boards over the kitchen window creaked as wind pressed against them. Somewhere in the city, Calder's orders were already in motion, ripples spreading out from his midnight conversations. But in her room, in the dark, Arden focused on her breathing and the miracle of division happening inside her. One cell becoming two, becoming four, becoming a future she would protect with everything she had. The morning sun filtered through the kitchen windows as Arden nursed her decaf coffee. At 7:30 a.m., her phone buzzed against the marble counter. A notification from a popular gossip account lit up her screen. Breaking. Lab report reveals shocking truth about Viscari. Heir's expected child. Her fingers trembled as she opened the post. There, in crisp detail, was what looked like an official medical report suggesting DNA inconsistencies. The caption beneath dripped with calculated malice. Source: verified documents indicate the child's paternity is in question. Could this pregnancy be part of a larger plot to disrupt ongoing peace negotiations? The coffee turned bitter in her mouth. Comments were already flooding in, each one more vicious than the last. I told you she looked like a gold digger. Probably working for the Costellis. No wonder she came out of nowhere. Her phone rang. Calder's underboss, Marcus. His voice was tight with barely contained anger. We need to move her to the lake house, safe house. This is getting too hot. No. Calder's response cut through the speaker like ice. She stays where I can protect her, start the takedowns. I want every post scrubbed and legal on the phone in 5 minutes. By noon, despite their efforts, the rumor had metastasized across platforms. Each new variant twisted the knife deeper. She was a plant, a spy, a calculated distraction in some larger game. The truth of their night together, the reality of their child, became theoretical in the court of public opinion. Arden retreated to her room, propping her phone against a stack of books. The red recording light blinked on. Hi, baby, she said softly. I know you can't hear this yet, but someday you might have questions about today, about the lies people told. She took a steadying breath. The truth is simple. You were made from one perfect, dangerous night when your father and I found each other in a snowstorm. Whatever else changes, that won't. She touched her still flat stomach. People will try to use you as a weapon against us. They'll spread lies because they know lies hurt worse than bullets sometimes. But I promise you this, I'm going to survive their noise. I'm going to keep you safe. And someday, when you're old enough to understand, you'll know your story started with truth, not their lies. Down the hall, she could hear Calder's voice rising and falling as he directed his digital warfare. Words like source code and IP trace drifted through the walls. By late afternoon, he had what he needed: a digital trail leading straight back to Castelli's media team and a clinic technician who'd never actually processed her blood work. When Calder finally emerged from his office, his face was unreadable. Arden couldn't tell if he doubted her or just hated being manipulated. Either possibility felt like a blade between her ribs. The dining room at dinner was suffocating in its silence. 2 plates of barely touched food, 2 glasses of water reflecting the city lights, 2 people separated by an ocean of unspoken fears. Arden pushed her salmon around the plate, watching Calder from beneath her lashes. His phone lay face down beside his knife, the first time she'd seen him disconnect since the story broke. The gesture should have felt like trust. Instead, it felt like surrender to whatever storm was coming. Outside, the city blinked like 1,000 watching eyes. Each light could be another camera, another phone spreading lies, another enemy marking their location. The silence between them grew heavier with each passing minute. The ornate clock on the wall ticked toward 9 more p.m. Her fork hadn't moved in 20 minutes. His plate was equally untouched. They were learning the hard way that reputation could be more dangerous than reality, that a lie about their child could draw more blood than any bullet. The city stretched out beyond the windows, a glittering maze of threats and cameras. Each light that winked could be someone sharing the story, someone plotting, someone watching. Their fortress felt suddenly very high, very exposed. The clock struck 9. Neither of them moved to break the silence. The truth sat between them like a third guest at their table. Their child existed, was his, was created in that snowstorm night. But truth was drowning in the viral tide of lies, and they both knew tomorrow would only bring more waves. Arden's hand drifted to her stomach, a gesture becoming habit. Calder's eyes tracked the movement, but he said nothing. His phone remained face down, the city kept blinking, and their dinner grew cold in the space between truth and survival. The pre-dawn city sprawled beneath heavy clouds as Arden leaned against the bedroom doorframe, watching Calder check his weapons with practiced efficiency. His suit jacket lay across the bed, the holster visible against his crisp white shirt. Even at 6:15 a.m., every detail was perfect, except for the tight line of his jaw. 3 trucks hit last night, he said without looking up, sliding magazines into place. Someone's getting bold. Arden crossed her arms, fighting the urge to step between him and the door. And you have to handle it personally. My territory, my response. He tucked the sonogram photo carefully into his wallet before slipping it into his jacket pocket. The gesture made her throat tight. Just, she swallowed hard. Come back as the same man who kept that picture. His hands stilled. For a moment, he looked at her with an intensity that made her pulse skip. Then he nodded once, shrugged on his jacket, and strode toward the elevator where his security team waited. The morning crawled by with excruciating slowness. Arden tried to work remotely, but her attention kept drifting to her phone. Around noon, news alerts started flooding in. Shots fired at the docks, multiple casualties, black SUVs seen fleeing the scene. She paced the penthouse, touching her stomach whenever anxiety spiked. The security team maintained radio silence except for scheduled check-ins. Each confirmation of situation contained only wound her tighter. She knew what contained meant in his world. At 4:45 p.m., the elevator hummed to life. Arden's heart hammered as the doors slid open. Calder stepped out, his usual pristine appearance marred by a spray of red across his white cuff. Some of it was clearly someone else's. Some of it wasn't. It's nothing, he said before she could speak, but his slight wince betrayed him. Sit. She pointed to a kitchen stool, already moving to grab the first aid kit she'd insisted on keeping stocked. Jacket off. He complied with unusual docility, which told her more about his pain level than any admission would. As she helped him ease the sleeve over what looked like a knife graze, she saw 2 men overlapped. The one whose name made hardened criminals flinch, and the one who touched her each morning like she might dissolve into mist. This needs cleaning. She snapped on latex gloves with professional crispness. Hold still and let me work. Yes, ma'am. A ghost of a smile touched his mouth. Don't ma'am me while I'm patching you up. She dabbed antiseptic along the cut, letting her nurse voice take over. Knife wounds have a high infection rate. You should have called a medic immediately. Wasn't an option in the moment. It's always an option. You're not bulletproof. She pressed harder than necessary, making him hiss. This could have been worse. I've had worse. That's not comforting. She began wrapping gauze around his forearm, her movements precise despite shaking hands. What if next? Time! There was a safe house, he cut in, voice rough. Years ago. My sister. He stared past her shoulder, seeing something else entirely. I was supposed to pick her up, running late. By the time I got there, the flames. Arden's hands stilled on the bandage. This was the most personal thing he'd ever shared. I swore after that. Never be late again. Never love anything I couldn't protect. His good hand came up to cup her face. Never lose what matters most. The raw honesty in his voice cracked something open between them. All the desire they'd been caging since that first night growled free. His thumb traced her lower lip, and she shivered. The pain meds haven't kicked in yet, she whispered, but her body was already swaying toward his. I don't care. He stood, backing her against the counter. I need you more than I need them to work. Their first kiss was careful, mindful of his injuries. The second wasn't. His uninjured arm banded around her waist, lifting her onto the counter. She wrapped her legs around his hips, pulling him closer. Bedroom, she gasped between kisses. You'll tear the stitches. He growled something that might have been agreement, then hoisted her up. She locked her ankles behind his back as he carried her down the hall, his mouth never leaving her neck. They fell onto the bed, in a tangle of half-removed clothes and desperate touches. His hands shook when they skimmed her sides, but his eyes were steady on her face. She pushed him onto his back, careful of his wound, and took control. Let me, she whispered, and for once this man who commanded an empire surrendered completely. Hours later, the city had gone quiet, in the way it only did after violence had reminded everyone to stay inside. Their clothes lay scattered across the floor, the first aid kit forgotten on the kitchen counter. Arden traced lazy patterns on Calder's chest while his fingers combed through her hair. The alarm was already set for his 7 a.m. strategy meeting, one he'd insisted on attending despite her protests about rest and recovery. But that was tomorrow's battle. For now, she listened to his heartbeat steady beneath her ear and felt, for the first time since the pregnancy test, truly safe. The night settled around them like a blanket, the city lights casting soft shadows across the sheets. His breathing had evened out, but his hand never stopped its gentle motion through her hair. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance, a reminder that their peace was always borrowed time. The smell of butter and eggs filled the penthouse kitchen at exactly 7 a.m. Arden folded mushrooms and cheese into an omelet while watching Calder study a massive digital board mounted on the wall. Red lines connected faces, properties, and incident reports. A spider's web of threats with Costelli's sneering mugshot at the center. Her stomach churned. Morning sickness still lingered, making even her favorite breakfast feel like a chore. She pushed the eggs around her plate, trying to force down at least a few bites for the baby's sake. You need to eat, Calder said without turning from the board. I'm trying. She managed another small bite. Have you slept at all? He ignored the question, zooming in on a warehouse photograph. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, the only visible sign of exhaustion. Since yesterday's dockfight, he'd been running on coffee and pure stubbornness. Her phone buzzed. A blocked number. She almost ignored it until something made her pause. Hello? Arden! The slurred voice hit her like a punch to the gut. Baby girl, I need help. Her stepfather. 5 years of silence, and now this. How did you get this number? Her voice shook. Calder's head snapped toward her, instantly alert. Listen, please. Rick's words tumbled over each other. Remember that loan from back then? The one in your name? Ice slid down her spine. The identity theft that had nearly ruined her credit. The debt she'd spent years climbing out from under. What did you do? I didn't know who they were when I borrowed it. But now Costelli's guys are calling it in. They're watching my place, following me. A broken laugh. Guess they figured out the connection to you. Calder was beside her now, his hand on her shoulder. She put the phone on speaker. They're gonna kill me, Arden. Please, I know I don't deserve... Where are you? The words escaped before she could stop them. Old Starlight Arcade off East Harbor. Please come. I got paperwork, proof of everything. Maybe your new man can help. Don't move. Calder's voice cut through the line like a blade. A team is coming to you. The line went dead. Arden stared at the silent phone, all the shame she'd buried about those years, working 3 jobs to pay off a debt that wasn't hers, sleeping in her car some nights, came rushing back. You're not going near him. Calder's tone left no room for argument. She stood, hands clenched. This is my past, my mess to clean up. You are not a mess. He gripped her shoulders, eyes fierce. You are mine, and I protect what's mine. I can't just... You can and you will. He pressed his forehead to hers. Let me handle this. Stay here where it's safe. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. He kissed her once, hard and quick, then started making calls. Within minutes, a tactical team was mobilizing. I mean it, he said at the door. Do not leave this building. Another nod. He studied her face for a long moment before leaving. Arden paced the penthouse, watching the minutes tick by. Her stepfather was a lying bastard, but if Castelli really had proof of the identity theft... The thought of that leverage in his hands made her sick. At 2:45 p.m., she saw her chance. The security shift change left a 15-minute window. Heart pounding, she grabbed her coat and phone. The ride to East Harbor felt endless. She texted her location to Sarah, one of the female guards. Not completely. Reckless, just mostly. The arcade loomed ahead, its neon sign half burnt out against the gray afternoon sky. The place reeked of stale popcorn and desperation. Dead game machines cast weird shadows in the dim light. Tokens crunched under her feet as she walked deeper inside. At 3:08 p.m., she spotted him, a hunched figure by the broken claw machine clutching a paper bag. Her stepfather looked older, cheaper somehow. The sight of him brought back every bitter memory she'd tried to forget. The hairs on her arms lifted just as the back door creaked open. The arcade's neon cast sickly shadows as footsteps thundered through the back entrance. Her stepfather's eyes went wide, darting to the side exits. Not fear for himself, anticipation. You set me up, Arden whispered. 3 men in dark jackets spread across the room. Professional, focused, not here for Rick at all. Castelli sends his regards, one said, reaching for her arm. She knocked over a pinball machine, buying precious seconds as she bolted toward the front. Her phone buzzed, Sarah's incoming call, but there was no time to answer. Glass shattered as she shoulder-checked through a side door into the alley. Hands grabbed her jacket. She twisted, stomping down hard like Calder had taught her. Someone cursed. She broke free, lungs burning, as she sprinted toward the street. A black SUV jumped the curb ahead, tires screaming. Giorgio leaped out, a gun drawn. Get in! Now! Choice made in heartbeats. Strange men behind, Giorgio in front. She dove into the back seat. Sarah was already there, radioing their position as Giorgio peeled away from the curb. Calder's 3 minutes out, Sarah said, checking her weapon. Keep her low, Arden's head spun. How did you... Track all outgoing texts, Sarah said. Protocol for exactly this scenario. Down. A dark sedan appeared in the side mirror. The first shot punched through the back window. Giorgio swerved hard onto River Road, the engine roaring as they hugged the guardrail. Hold on, he shouted. The pursuing car clipped their bumper. The SUV fishtailed, tires losing grip on wet asphalt. Giorgio fought the wheel, but they were already spinning. Metal screamed as they slammed into a bridge piling. Steam hissed from the crumpled hood. River wind howled through broken glass. Arden tasted copper, her shoulder aching where the seatbelt had caught. Sarah moved first, kicking out the cracked rear window. Out! Both of you! Sirens wailed in the distance. The sedan that hit them had disappeared into the gray afternoon. Arden's legs shook as Sarah helped her onto the pavement. Giorgio stumbled out after them, pressing a hand to his bloodied forehead. Calder's voice cut through the chaos. Arden! He materialized from a convoy of black vehicles, face carved from stone. In 3 strides, he reached her, hands moving over her arms, shoulders, face, checking for injuries with desperate precision. I'm okay, she managed. I'm... Never again. His voice was raw. Do you understand? Never. She nodded, throat tight. He crushed her against his chest, one hand cradling her head, while sirens and radios screamed around them. For a moment, that steady heartbeat was the only real thing in the world. The ride home passed in a blur of police lights and hushed reports. Giorgio rode with the medical team despite his protests. Sarah stayed close, coordinating with other units as they cleared a path back to the hotel. In the penthouse, Arden peeled off her wet clothes with trembling fingers. Calder hadn't spoken since the bridge, but his silence screamed. She knew that focused rage, had seen it before the dockfight. This was worse. The nursery, he said finally. Now. The room was still mostly blueprint paper and material samples. Calder methodically swept every corner while Arden hugged herself, trying to stop shaking. He found it inside a teddy bear sample. tagged from a supposed children's boutique vendor, a cheap burner phone, the kind used for temporary contacts and quick disposals. Arden's stomach lurched as Calder scrolled through the messages. Timestamps matched perfectly. Her clinic visit, her usual spots in the kitchen, the exact moment of the sniper attempt. Giorgio was on duty for all of these, she whispered. No. Calder's jaw clenched. He's family. Been with me since we were kids. Then explain how. I can't. He set the bear down hard. But it's not him. Has to be someone else with access. Someone who could track the rotation schedules, monitor the cameras. The phone buzzed on the table between them. One new message. Calder opened it, his face going perfectly still. Arden leaned closer. It was a photo of the hallway outside, not from the regular security feed, but taken at an angle that shouldn't have been possible. The timestamp read 10:41 p.m. Right now. They stared at the bear, the phone, the impossible photo. Somewhere in the building, someone was watching. Someone who knew every move, every schedule, every security protocol. Someone close enough to destroy them from the inside out. The phone buzzed again, but neither of them reached for it. The teddy bear's glass eyes reflected the city lights, dark and knowing. Arden pressed a hand to her stomach, an instinctive shield. Outside their windows, sirens still echoed from the river. Steam rose from rain-slicked streets, obscuring the lower floors of the hotel. Up here in the penthouse, the air felt too thin, like standing on a mountain peak watching storm clouds gather. Calder's hand found hers, warm and solid. Whatever came next, they would face it together. But first they had to find the traitor in their midst, before the next attack struck closer to home. The phone sat silent now, its screen dark. 10:41 p.m., and the night was far from over. The safe room door sealed with a soft hiss at 11 p.m. Arden pressed her palm against the reinforced steel, feeling its cold solidity beneath her fingertips, while watching through the security feed as Calder's shoulders set into hard lines, rigid with tension and unspoken worry. This isn't protection, she said, her voice echoing in the confined space. This is imprisonment. It's temporary. His voice came through clear on the intercom, the digital transmission unable to fully mask the edge of strain. Until I know who to trust. The room was a fortress within a fortress, bulletproof walls humming with embedded security tech, an independent air system that whispered constantly, enough supplies stacked neatly on reinforced shelves for weeks of isolation. Arden noted the medical kit, the preserved meals, the bottled water arranged with military precision. A gilded cage was still a cage, no matter how many creature comforts lined its walls. Arden paced the perimeter, her sock-clad feet silent on the polished floor, her reflection fractured across multiple monitors showing different angles of the penthouse, empty hallways bathed in soft light, the kitchen with its gleaming countertops, the bedroom door firmly closed. She dropped into the desk chair, the leather creaking beneath her weight, pulling up the archived messages from the burner phone. The screen's blue light cast harsh shadows across her face as she leaned forward. While Calder conducted his interrogations upstairs, she tried not to think about what that entailed. She could at least be useful, picking apart the puzzle pieces someone had scattered in their path. The threats were precise, clinical, structured like legal documents with carefully placed commas and formal language that reminded her of contracts she'd signed in corporate temp jobs, the kind where every word mattered. Around 2 a.m., exhaustion dragged her to the small cot tucked against the wall. The sheets smelled faintly of lavender, an unexpected touch of comfort in this steel-reinforced box. She dozed fitfully, dreaming of arcade neon flashing across her face and river water rushing between her fingers, carrying away everything she tried to hold. The notification chime, sharp and insistent, jolted her awake at noon, heart hammering against her ribs. A live stream link pulsed on the main screen, an angry red dot demanding attention. Her stepfather's face filled the frame, bruised purple-yellow around one eye and sweating through his cheap cotton shirt, his receding hairline glistening with perspiration. "I need to confess something," he stammered, eyes darting nervously to something off camera. "About Arden Hayes." She lunged for the volume control, fingers trembling as Calder burst through the door, his presence filling the room instantly with coiled tension. They watched in horrified silence as her stepfather detailed an elaborate conspiracy. How Arden had orchestrated everything, from the initial bar meeting to the pregnancy, gathering intel on Calder's operations to sell to the highest bidder among his enemies. The camera panned slowly, revealing an office. Set up identical to Calder's, the same mahogany desk arrangement with brass fixtures, the same art placement down to the angle of the abstract paintings. Nursery blueprints hung on the wall in the exact configuration as their originals upstairs, every pencil mark and color notation perfectly replicated. "Someone's been in our home," Arden whispered, a cold wave of violation washing over her skin. "Or has eyes inside right now." Calder's jaw worked, muscle ticking beneath his skin as his eyes narrowed at the screen. "The mole has to be high level, someone with unlimited access to my personal spaces. Which means I'm a liability." She twisted the engagement ring on her finger, feeling the diamonds catch against her skin. "As long as I'm here, they can use me to hurt you. You're not leaving." The words fell like stones, each one heavier than the last. "I'm not asking." She stepped close, placing her hand on his chest, feeling the steady thud of his heart beneath expensive cotton. "You can't protect me and hunt them at the same time. Let me draw their attention away while you find the leak." "Absolutely not." His fingers circled her wrist, gentle despite the steel in his voice. "Then I'll make the choice. For both of us." She slipped the ring off, the weight of it suddenly enormous in her palm, setting it on the biometric scanner where it caught the light, sending rainbow fragments across the ceiling. The female security officer, Sarah, was on rotation today. She'd understand why Arden had to run. She'd seen the same protective desperation in her own sister's eyes once. The next hour was a careful dance through blind spots and shift changes, utilizing every trick she'd observed during her months in Calder's world. A quick text to Sarah. "Cover me, please." Then Arden was out, hair tucked under a nondescript cap, merging into the afternoon crowd of shoppers and office workers, another anonymous face in the sea of humanity. She took a meandering route downtown, doubling back twice to check for tails, ducking through department stores and using reflective windows to monitor her surroundings. At the bus station, she bought a ticket with cash, nodding politely to the board attendant, then walked 3 blocks to a row of rental lockers. Her phone went inside with a decisive click, along with anything that could be tracked. Earrings Calder had given her, credit cards with her name embossed in silver. The charity ballroom was the only location that made sense for the video setup. The space had the right dimensions, the right sightlines with its soaring ceilings and wide open floor. More importantly, it had been the start of everything, where fate or design had first pushed her into Calder's path, champagne glass shattering between them like an omen. Sunset painted the windows amber and gold as Arden slipped through the service entrance, the door's hinges protesting softly. The vast room was empty, chairs stacked against walls that had once glittered with light and wealth and power. Her heels clicked on marble, each step echoing through the cavernous space like tiny gunshots. A familiar footfall sounded behind her, one she'd heard countless times in the penthouse halls, a distinctive cadence she could pick out from 100 others. She didn't turn around, keeping her spine straight and her chin level. "You picked the wrong woman to frame," she said to the room, her voice carrying through the emptiness. The space held its breath, caught between day and night, between truth and lies like a pendulum frozen at its apex. Shadows stretched across the floor like reaching fingers, elongating with the dying light, and somewhere in the gathering dark, a traitor waited to spring their final trap. Arden's hands curled into fists at her sides, nails digging half-moons into her palms. She'd survived poverty that had stripped her childhood bare, identity theft that had haunted her credit for years, and assassination attempts that still visited her in nightmares. She'd carried a child beneath her heart while dodging bullets, feeling its first flutters during moments of terror. She would not let anyone use her past or her pregnancy as weapons against the man she loved. The ballroom seemed to pulse with memory, shattering glass that had startled nearby patrons, violin strings vibrating through the air, the first touch of Calder's hand on her back. Warm and steady, now the elegant space felt like a theater set, dressed for the final act of someone else's twisted performance, props arranged for maximum impact. The footsteps drew closer, measured and unhurried. Arden breathed deeply, centering herself in this moment. She might not have Calder's empire or his power, but she had something just as valuable, the truth about who she was and what she wanted, and she would use it like a blade to cut through every careful lie they'd constructed around her, every false narrative they'd tried to write. Behind her, the footsteps stopped. The last rays of sunlight caught the crystal chandeliers overhead, scattering diamonds of light across the floor in a constellation of brilliance. In a few minutes, darkness would claim the room completely, shadows swallowing them whole. Arden lifted her chin, shoulders squared, ready to face whatever came next. She'd chosen this confrontation, this battlefield where everything had begun. Now she would see it through, regardless of what it cost her. The ballroom doors burst open with lethal grace. Calder stalked through like a predator, his usual controlled facade cracked to reveal something feral underneath. His eyes found Arden immediately, then shifted to the professional camera setup that turned their private pain into public theater. "I should have seen it sooner," he said, voice winter cold. "The legal footnotes in those messages. The policy citations, your signature style, Thomas." From the shadows near the bar, Thomas Vieri emerged in an impeccable charcoal suit, every hair in place. His polished demeanor couldn't quite mask the rot beneath. "The great Calder Viscari," Thomas said smoothly. "Always 3 steps ahead, except when it matters most." He gestured to the cameras. "Tonight's feature presentation, The Fall of an Empire, starring the woman who made you weak." "You sold us to Costelli." Arden's voice carried across the marble floor. "All those careful plans, those perfect protocols, you gave him everything." "He offered me what I deserved." Tomas adjusted his cufflinks. "Years of loyalty, of building your father's legacy, only to watch you consolidate power. Costelli understands the value of proper succession." Heavy footsteps echoed from multiple doorways as armed men filtered in. Calder's posture shifted subtly, a predator counting threats, calculating angles. "You were family," he said quietly. "Family?" Tomas laughed. "Family doesn't pass over its most qualified son for an outsider who married in. Family doesn't—" The rest was lost as Arden grabbed a nearby chair and hurled it into the primary camera rig. Equipment crashed down, plunging half the room into darkness. The perfect stage lighting shattered into chaos. Tomas moved with unexpected speed, producing a blade that gleamed in the remaining light. He lunged toward Arden, but Calder was faster, much faster. He intercepted the strike, taking the cut across his ribs to protect her. Blood darkened his white shirt as he grabbed Tomas's wrist and slammed their foreheads together with controlled violence. Tomas staggered but kept his grip on the knife. Arden's eyes landed on a wall-mounted fire extinguisher. She yanked it free as Calder forced Tomas's arm wide, creating the opening she needed. The red canister connected with bone-breaking force against Tomas's forearm. The knife clattered to the floor. Calder's hands went to Tomas's throat, a killing grip. His eyes held the arctic fury of a man ready to end a betrayal permanently. "Wait!" Arden grabbed his arm. "We need him alive!" "He dies." Calder's voice was absolute zero. "Think," Arden pressed. "He's our leverage over Costelli, and he knows where to find the blackmail ledger, all the people Costelli's compromised, all the media plants. We can collapse his whole network." For a moment, the only sound was Tomas's labored breathing as Calder's grip tightened. Then sirens began to wail in the distance, growing louder. "Make the call," Calder bit out to his earpiece. Within seconds, his security team materialized from the service corridors. They zip-tied Tomas's hands and hauled him toward a back exit. Arden grabbed a bar towel and pressed it against the bleeding gash in Calder's side. "How bad?" "Shallow." His hand covered hers, leaving bloody fingerprints on her skin. "You shouldn't have come alone." "You shouldn't have let me slip away so easily." She managed a weak smile. "We need to move." The sirens were deafening now. Calder guided her toward a freight elevator hidden behind the kitchen access. The doors ground open to reveal an industrial lift large enough for loading supplies. They stepped inside just as emergency lights began strobing through the ballroom windows. The elevator descended with agricultural slowness. Arden kept pressure on Calder's wound while he maintained radio contact with his team. When the doors finally opened, they faced a delivery alley slick with ice and shadows. A black SUV idled at the far end, wipers clearing fresh snow from the windshield. Calder's arm stayed firm around Arden's waist as they navigated the treacherous pavement. Behind them, the first police units screeched to a halt at the hotel's main entrance. Red and blue lights painted the falling snow, but couldn't reach them here in this service alley, this mundane space where deliverymen usually wheeled in produce and carried out trash. Tonight it carried away darker cargo, a traitor, a wounded Don, and a woman who'd thrown herself into the heart of a war to protect what mattered. The SUV door opened. Arden helped Calder inside, careful of his injury. As they pulled away, she watched his reflection in the window, the rigid set of his jaw, the barely controlled violence in his hands, the way his eyes never left her face, the man who'd killed to keep her safe, and the man who'd bled to give her time to think. She laced her fingers through his, feeling the tremors of adrenaline fade. "Where are they taking Thomas?" "Somewhere quiet. Somewhere he can remember how to be useful." Calder's thumb traced her knuckles. "You could have died tonight." "So could you." She touched the makeshift bandage. "I won't apologize for trying to protect you." I don't need protection. Too bad. She met his gaze steadily. That's what happens when you love someone. They fight for you, whether you want them to or not. The city blurred past their windows, emergency vehicles converging on the hotel they'd left behind. Somewhere in that chaos was the beginning of Costelli's end. If they played their cards right, if they could turn betrayal into opportunity. The SUV turned onto a private garage ramp, descending into darkness. Arden felt Calder's grip tighten fractionally as they left the streets behind. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The Dawn who'd learned to trust, and the woman who'd chosen to stay. The warehouse air hung thick with rust and river salt. Metal chains clinked as medics worked around Arden, their boots echoing off concrete while she held pressure on Calder's side. Her phone propped against a first aid kit displayed a medical app, its calm interface guiding her through each step. Deeper breath, she instructed, watching Calder's chest rise. The medic beside her nodded approval as she applied fresh gauze. 20 feet away, Tomas Vieri sat chained to a steel chair, his designer suit wrinkled and stained. A camera on a tripod faced him, his own equipment meant to frame Arden's confession. But now, recording his downfall instead. You love an audience, Thomas. Calder's voice carried across the space, steady despite the bandages wrapped around his torso. So, let's give you one last performance. Vieri's eyes darted between them and the camera's blinking red light. Even cornered, his legal training showed in carefully chosen words. I have nothing to say without counsel present. Costelli's watching, Calder nodded to the live feed. Aren't you, waiting to see if your boy breaks before you cut him loose? A phone buzzed. One of Calder's tech analysts confirmed an incoming connection from an encrypted line. They were tracking it, using Vieri's own camera system against both him and Costelli. Here's the trade, Calder continued. The digital ledger, everything that proves you orchestrated this from your office. The paternity smear, the sniper, my sister's debt trap. Give me that, and Costelli lives. Vieri's laugh was bitter. You expect me to believe? I don't care what you believe. Calder shifted, suppressing a wince. But Costelli needs to believe. He's watching his investment crater in real time. Arden stepped forward, her voice clear. I know a journalist. Someone Calder chose not to kill last year when he had cause. What happens when I send her this raw footage? Every paper in the city would run it. You're bluffing. But Vieri's confidence wavered. Try me. She held up her phone. I've spent weeks being painted as a liar and a whore. I'm done playing defense. The negotiation stretched through the dark hours. Costelli needed to feel in control, needed the theater of power even as it slipped away. Arden kept the pressure on, describing exactly how the footage would spread, while Calder's team traced every ping and proxy, trying to mask Costelli's location. At 3:47 a.m., a download link appeared in the chat window. The tech team moved fast, mirroring the data across redundant drives. Calder counted down each percentage of the upload, his knuckles white, but his voice unwavering. 98%, he murmured. 99! The ledger went live at 4 a.m. sharp. Within minutes, the first dominoes began to fall. Security feeds showed Costelli's own guards turning on him, opening doors that should have stayed locked. The camera he'd used to terrorize others captured his arrest by former allies who couldn't risk exposure once the ledger went public. Through gaps in the warehouse slats, dawn painted the river in streaks of gold and pink. Calder leaned against Arden's shoulder, exhaustion finally showing through his iron control. Their phones lit up with confirmation after confirmation, the ledger spreading across public nodes, smear accounts being suspended, Costelli's carefully built empire splintering in real time. Send units to these coordinates, Calder instructed his security chief. Sweep every floor. I want his entire operation dismantled by noon. Arden checked his bandages again, noting the fresh spots of red. You need real medical attention. Soon! His hand found hers. First we finish this. Across the warehouse, Vieri stared at the floor, his carefully constructed world collapsing with each new alert. The camera kept rolling, documenting every second of his defeat. Teams moved in precise patterns, gathering evidence and securing the perimeter. The tech analysts downloaded everything they could find, backing up servers and mirroring drives. No detail would escape documentation. The river breeze carried the sound of boat horns and early traffic. Another day was starting in the city, but in this warehouse, a night of reckoning was finally ending. Calder's people worked with quiet efficiency, dismantling the machinery of betrayal piece by piece. Your sister, Arden said softly. Would she be proud of how you protected your family? Calder was silent for a long moment, watching the sunrise paint golden squares across the concrete floor. She would have liked you. Your stubbornness, your refusal to break. A medic approached with fresh supplies. Arden helped Calder sit straighter while they changed his dressing. The wound was painful but clean. Like so many things that night, it would heal with time and care. The baby? He asked quietly. Safe. She took his hand and placed it over her stomach. We're both safe now. Around them, the warehouse hummed with purposeful activity. Evidence was cataloged, statements recorded, loose ends carefully tied off. The night's violence was being transformed into something official, documented, impossible to deny. Sunlight crept across the floor, touching the camera that still faced Vieri's slumped form. The red recording light blinked steadily, bearing witness to the final act of his betrayal. In the distance, sirens wailed, not coming for them this time, but heading toward Costelli's compound, where everything was falling apart. Arden's phone buzzed with another update. More accounts going dark, more conspirators turning themselves in, more pieces of Costelli's network crumbling. The ledger's release had triggered an avalanche that couldn't be stopped. Sunlight streamed through the hospital window as Arden watched Calder sleep, his breathing steady despite the bandaged ribs. 48 hours of tests, statements, and security sweeps had left them both exhausted. But she hadn't left his side. Not because he demanded it, because she chose to stay. The doctor's morning rounds brought good news. The baby was developing normally, protected from the chaos by luck or fate. Calder's stitches were clean, no sign of infection. They could leave whenever they felt ready. Let's get some air, he suggested, once they were back at the penthouse. His voice was softer than usual, stripped of command. They walked along the pier, waves lapping against weathered wood. Fishing boats bobbed in their slips while seabirds wheeled overhead. It felt surreal, this pocket of peace after so much violence. I need to tell you something, Calder said, stopping at the pier's edge. The engagement. I built it like a cage. I was terrified of losing you both, so I tried to control everything. It wasn't fair. Arden watched a sailboat cut through the harbor. No, it wasn't. I want to do this right. He turned to face her. No contracts, no threats, just us, making promises we choose to keep. I need some things to change, she said carefully. If we're going to build a life together, it can't be a fortress. I need doors I can open, security that doesn't suffocate me, and our child deserves to grow up feeling safe, not paranoid. She expected resistance, argument, the instinct to protect overwhelming everything else. Instead, he nodded. Whatever you need. The alternative is losing you, and I won't survive that again. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. The ring inside was elegant but simple, a single diamond that caught the morning light. Run with me, not from me, he said softly. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she laughed. Yes, on my terms, but yes. A bold seagull swooped down, snatching the ribbon from the box in its beak. They watched it soar away, the stolen strip of silk trailing like a victory banner. Even the birds in this city are criminals, Calder muttered. But he was smiling as he slid the ring onto her finger. They found a clerk willing to perform a private ceremony that evening. The old courthouse's waterfront garden provided a simple backdrop. Roses climbing stone walls, fairy lights twinkling in ancient trees. Two of Calder's most trusted guards served as witnesses, standing quietly beside a reflecting pool. Arden wore a cream-colored dress she'd bought that afternoon. Calder's suit was impeccable as always, but his hands trembled slightly as they exchanged rings. Their vows were brief, honest promises to protect and cherish, to build something stronger than fear. Back home, they pinned the latest sonogram to the fridge with a lighthouse magnet Arden had bought from a pier shop. Such a normal gesture in their abnormal world, claiming space, marking time, celebrating life. They sat at the kitchen table with laptops open, methodically revising security protocols. Arden insisted on reasonable compromises. She could take walks in certain areas at certain times. Medical appointments would have discreet protection rather than obvious guards, and their home would be secure without feeling like a prison. Calder typed each change himself, occasionally suggesting modifications, but never overruling her comfort level. When they finished, he sent the updates to his security team, with a note marking them as non-negotiable. I'll call the clinic tomorrow, Arden said, checking her calendar. We should schedule the next ultrasound. I'd like to be there, he said quietly, if you want me to be. She reached across the table and took his hand. Of course I do. They moved through the evening with a new ease. The weight of secrets and fears finally lifted. Arden made tea while Calder reviewed the nursery blueprints, incorporating her suggestions about natural light and reading nooks. The city settled into unusual quiet beyond their windows. No sirens, no shouting, just the distant hum of traffic and the whisper of wind. Inside, lamplight cast soft shadows as they curled together on the couch, his palm spread protectively over her small bump. "You can't run forever," he murmured against her hair, and this time the words held no threat, only promise. Wherever life took them, whatever storms they faced, they would face them together. Arden traced the edge of his bandage through his shirt. "I'm done running." They stayed like that, wrapped in peace they'd fought to earn, while the city lights blinked like stars against the darkening sky. The nursery blueprints lay open on the coffee table, covered in Arden's neat annotations. A future taking shape, one careful edit at a time. A text notification lit up Arden's phone. The clinic confirming available appointment times. Such an ordinary thing, scheduling checkups and making plans. But for them, after everything, it felt like victory. Calder reached over and switched off the lamp, leaving them in the gentle glow of the city. His breathing was steady, matching hers, as they sat in comfortable silence. No more walls between them, no more secrets or schemes. Just two people who'd chosen each other, building something real from the wreckage of what came before. The lighthouse magnet glinted on the fridge, holding their child's first picture in place like an anchor. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight they had this peace, promise, and the certainty that neither of them would face the future alone.